The Somalian Crisis. History of Somalia. In 1991, the dictator Mohammed Salah Barre ruled Somali Democratic Republic from 1960 to 19.
Later, 1991, he was forced to flee the capital of Mogadishu when Ali Mahdi Mohammed declared himself president of the republic. Later in the 1990s, civil wars broke out and thousands of civilians were in starvation and had diseases. Early in the 2000s, Somalia was affected by the cholera outbreak due to unsanitary water.
Later in the early 2000s, U.S. negotiated with Somalia in order to strike al-Qaeda members in Somalia. In 2001, United Nations declared that it will aid Somalia with food and supplies due to dangerous fighting conditions. Later in 2007, Somalia created a transitional government because of fights breaking out in Mogadishu. After in 2012, Somalia introduced its first formal parliament and elected Hassan Sheikh Mohamud as president. Recently in 2016, African Union leaders agreed on more funding and support for the military presence after al-Shabaab attacks. Current crisis. Abuse by government, allied forces, and military. Police and officials suspect innocent civilians as being associated to al-Shabaab. Military court in Mogadishu doesn't follow the fair trial rights and executes innocent civilians. Al-Shabaab attacks. Al-Shabaab members target civilians with increased attacks on schools and hotels in Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab also threatens journalists sent by the government to be executed. Sexual violence. Women and girls are being raped by armed men and military soldiers. Displacement and no humanitarian assistance. About 1 million people are being displaced in Somalia and 400,000 living in refugee camps. Abuses by foreign forces. Civilians are being killed by Kenyan and U.S. airstrikes. International responses. Somalia's NISA had investigations with prisoners after reports of abuse and torture. Kenya offered Somalis with refugee camps due to the airstrikes. Kenya and U.S. forces were involved to take down al-Shabaab with airstrikes. Human Rights Watch reported serious abuse cases of displaced people under government in order to get the UN to take action about it. UN Security Council was called out, troop contributing countries to help attack al-Shabaab. Non-governmental organizations. AMISOM, the African Unison Mission in Somalia, is an active peacekeeping mission controlled by the African Unison with the approval of the United Nations. It was created by the African Union's Peace and Security Council on 19th of January 2007. It is also a non-governmental association. AMISOM missions. They created a national security and stabilization plan which focuses on issues relating to security, rule of law, and justice. The AMISOM has been supplying to the civilians of Mogadishu with refugee camps and food in order to help those people that are in displacement without shelters. The AMISOM has a military mission in Somalia and wants to stabilize the situation in the country and create peace in all parts of Somalia and hand over the mission to a United Nations peacekeeping operation. Oxford Committee for Famine Relief. The Oxfam is an international confederation of 20 organizations working together with partners and local communities in more than 90 countries, including Somalia. It was founded in Britain in 1942 by Cecil Jackson Coe and registered in accordance with the UK law in 1943. It was formed in 1955 by a group of individuals not associated with the government. Oxford Missions. The main objective of the Oxfam, the Oxford Committee for Famine Relief, is to end poverty around with help from other organizations. The main countries they try to end poverty is from developing countries like Afghanistan and Somalia and some of Ecuador. They help Somalia by filtering their water and providing clean food and sanitation, and also provide education to the kids of Somalia and get other organizations around the world to fund donations to the Somali people that are in poverty. Flag of Somalia. This is known as the Somalia flag. It originated on October 12, 1954. It represents the ethnicity of the people of Somalia. Somalia location on map. Somalia is located at the Horn of Africa. It became independent from Italy after gaining its sovereignty in 1960. Currency in Somalia is known as SOS, Somali shilling. Somalia shares borders with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya. Amnesty.
After 20 years of fighting drought and famine, over 300,000 displaced people take shelter in ramshackle camps in Mogadishu. They're not wanted here. Somalia's first internationally recognized government in 22 years is evicting them. It wants to rebuild and develop the capital. But displaced people are not being factored into development plans for the capital. Instead, they are being treated as a problem to be got rid of. In the last months, evictions have increased, and some protesters, including children, have been killed. Halima, like many others, went to work one day only to find when she returned that her home had been torn down by bulldozers. Since January, the Somali government have been planning to relocate people across Mogadishu to a site in Dinili, north of the city. Since then, thousands of displaced Somalis have been moved, but because the site in Dinili is not adequate, many have come here, to the Afgoy corridor. Security is weak and conditions are dire.
saqiiro badan dhinto meesha lagu wada duugi oo dacdareysan oo baahi iyo caafimaad la'aan u dhintay waxbarashana ma haysan hay'adna qaabishana ma jirto ilaa waqti xaadirka aadaan u rafaadsan dhar ma haystaan caafimaad darro ilmaha saasay u yeelaan saabuun ma haystaan nolol xitaa ma haystaan ilmaha saan daruuftooda waa u jeedaa saqiirada waa u jeedaa daruuftooda.
The sites where people are being moved to are outside the city. Government presence is limited, and other armed groups are still operating. This leaves people vulnerable. Women and girls in particular are more prone to rape and sexual attacks, an endemic problem in Somalia.
The patrols we are conducting today, it is capacity building to the Somali police force, and to give people confidence that there is security. So people should not worry, security is there.
Despite all the assurances, the Somali government is not living up to its obligations under a number of international agreements to safeguard these people. With one of the highest numbers of internally displaced people in the world, Somalia must halt forcible evictions and ensure that no one is evicted unless they have an adequate alternative house that is safe.
Issue of amnesty. When two Somalian teenagers were arrested, they were locked in a shipping container for a fortnight. Muhammad, which is 17, and Duad, just 15, were violently tortured, reporting electrocution, genital mutilation, drownings, beatings, and rape. Now they face life in prison after being forced into a confession. 5 other young boys arrested alongside them were executed last month. Their right to fair trial is being denied because they have no lawyer, and the confessions are using it as an advantage to execute these boys. Also, they are not legally allowed to be punished or tortured in prison when they are suspected of a crime. Their right to liberty is also being detained from the officials of Somalia. Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Based on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Their right to fair trial is being denied because the confessions are taking advantage of the evidence and torture they have done. Their right to liberty is being denied too because they don't have the right to be free from authority. Their right not to be subjected to any cruel and unusual treatment or punishment is not being followed.
Overall, we think that Somalia is not fully a democratic government yet, but citizens are being treated in a totalitarian governing style. Therefore, the issues of amnesty is not being taken into concern, unless the issue is brought to foreign democratic countries.
Thanks for watching.